break out the tissues. You're listening to Let's Stay Together, a podcast about Fruits Basket by Natsuki Takaya. I'm Ellen.
And I'm Kayla. And I'm
Today-
already crying.
Are you? We're discussing chapters 23 and 24 today, which are, of course, going to be heartbreakers. We've had way too much fun for the past couple of chapters. Ever since we saw Hattori's backstory, it's just been like, oh, it's kind of fun. Now, here comes another downer. Hope everybody's ready, because we're going to dive straight into it.
I'm not.
Nope, I'm also not ready. It's going to be fine. So chapter 23 opens with a cityscape, and we see narration overlaid. I don't think that there are any memories that are okay to forget. None. It's interesting how, I'm going to say this before we get into the rest of this chapter, Takaya likes to do this thing where there's narration right at the beginning, and then it kind of like comes back at the end. We've seen that a couple of times. We've seen it, did that happen last episode too? I think it did with Ayame.
Yeah.
I think.
Not quite as, it wasn't like beginning and end of chapter, but there was a gap between it.
Mm-hmm. There was the one, I think the time before, like the episode before that one, had Yuki's narration at the beginning and the end. The one, where Akito comes to school. So it's the same structure. Like, Takaya does it a lot over and over again.
It does come up a lot.
Mm-hmm. We see Momiji peeking around a corner. He sees a woman and a girl, both light-haired. The woman is clearly the girl's mother. The girl reaches up like she's asking to be held or something, and the woman kneels and caresses her face. Momiji smiles. We cut to Shigure's house. Tohru asks if she can go out on May 1st. And Shigure's like, it's fine. And he's like, oh, are you going out with your friends? And she's like, yes, it's the anniversary of Mom's death, so we're going to visit her grave. And it's implied cheerfully that she says that. Shigure looks genuinely concerned, perhaps for the first time in this series. Like, I think it catches him off guard. We see Yuki and Kyo's also slight, concerned, frowning faces reacting as well to what she said. Shigure apologizes that he can't be there, and Yuki asks if it's okay if he comes as well. I'd like to meet your mother, he says. Tohru beams and thanks him. Her mother will be happy, she says. Shigure says that if he doesn't have any plans, Kyo should go as well, and Kyo doesn't respond. In fact, he looks a bit, like, despondent, I wrote. We cut to school. Tohru is chatting with Uo and Hana about the visit. Yuki is coming, but Kyo didn't respond. Uo says that Kyoko would probably like Kyo. She would tease him like crazy. Hana adds that just when Kyo would be boiling with rage, she would squeeze him hard enough to break his back. Tohru is like, that'd be bad for both of them. That would be bad in multiple ways. It's been a whole year since your mother passed away, Hana says. Yeah, but says Uo. I feel like she'll show up at any moment smiling like she always did, saying, my bad. We see Tohru with kind of a nostalgic smile. This is, again, one of those smiles that's, like, difficult to describe. It's kind of tinged with multiple emotions, like we were talking about in our last episode with Ayame. Tohru shown with a nostalgic smile, and we see Kyoko. I think maybe all three of them are kind of imagining her or remembering her smiling and laughing. Sorry, I got kind of serious there, Uo says. The legend of the red butterfly of Kanana will never die. The divine Dekotra will be forever etched in my heart, adds Hana. These are references to her jacket that Uo that was shown earlier in an earlier chapter. Tohru, we hear. Hide me. Momiji pops up and hides behind Tohru. He's playing with some kids at school. Another kid, like, pops out of a window, like a classroom window, and he says, freeze, criminal, you can't hide from me. So Momiji takes off, and Tohru is like, watch where you're going. And while Tohru is busy worrying, Uo and Hana comment that he has a lot of energy, which is good for a growing boy. Uo, I think, it's hard, sometimes when they talk, it's hard to tell because, like, nobody's faces are moving. But Uo asks which of his parents are German, and Tohru wonders. She hasn't heard about any of the Soma parents, except for which she remembers what Yuki said at the hot spring, that he never laughed like that in front of his parents. While Tohru contemplates, Uo and Hana, one of them, comment that Tohru has really had it hard. She's been able to keep smiling for a whole year. I'm sure she scolded herself every time she was about to get depressed. If Tohru-kun were to die, I wonder if I'd be able to smile again. I think that this is Hana talking. Or if I'd wish that I could forget ever having met her. Tohru-kun is so strong. We see, in a transition, this black and white striped curtain. It's behind Hana, and then the curtain ruffles to reveal Tohru in her uniform, her head, and her hands. Do you know what this is? This curtain, do you know what it is?
No, I didn't really think about it.
So The reason I thought about it is because this is one of the first things that I noticed the long time ago before we started this podcast. I was like, what up with this curtain? It's in so many scenes, not to just add levity to the situation, but it's in a lot of these scenes. It's something that's used in funerals in Japan, obviously. But it's like a specific thing. It's called a kujiramaku.
Yeah, I don't think I even really noticed that it was a curtain.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, there's a weird texture.
There's a weird texture. It's just like one of the first things that made me kind of get into like really digging deeply into manga, this one specifically. So I don't know, I just thought I'd bring it up in case anybody was curious. Apparently it's also used for like ceremonies. I'll put a link in the description. It was also hard to find what it's called or like what the name of it is. So the articles that I found are all in Japanese, but Google Translate will help you out. So in case anybody was curious, it's so like when you see like almost every time they talk about Tohru's mother and like Tohru is a reference to her funeral or something, there's this curtain is shown. Like I'm sure it's shown again later in this series, and it probably was already shown before and I just didn't bring it up. And then it's obviously a symbol that's used in a lot of different manga. So in case you were ever curious, that's what it is.
Cool.
Yeah. I aim to educate and inspire, you know? It's just something that's like, it's personal for me. It's something that I specifically noticed that was something that I wanted to understand more and kind of like, it reminds me of the stuff that I want to help other people understand. Anyway, at the office building where Tohru works, she's chatting with Momiji. So Tohru asks which of his parents are German, and he says Mutti. And Tohru is like, Mutti. And he says, that means my mom. He pulls out a photo to show her, and Tohru says she's beautiful. Momiji takes after her, she thinks. And Momiji reveals he has a little sister named Momo. She looks just like her mother. And Tohru freaks out, of course, and is like, you have a sister, Momiji-kun? Yeah, he says. She's in 2nd grade. And she isn't a member of the Zodiac, though. And she looks just like Mama. She's so spoiled. She follows Mama around like a baby chick. Apparently, she doesn't speak much Japanese. And she has trouble with it. Remember how we talked last episode about Momiji not being able to speak Japanese very well or something? Or struggling, and it's like implied in his dialogue that he can't? So we know that Momo can't speak Japanese very well. Momiji smiles, a beautiful smile, and adds, she's so cute. And Tohru smiles back. Momiji says that Mama and Momo come to pick up Papa from work, I think every day, or usually. And Tohru asks innocently, so you'll all go home together, right? I wish, Momiji says. But Mama doesn't know about me. And now we take a hard left into the sad part of these chapters. Toru's eyes widen. Momiji-chan? We hear. And a page flip reveals Momiji's mother and Momo. And Momo is like attached to her like a little kid. What are you doing in a place like this so late at night? She asks. Momiji puts his arms up behind his head in kind of like an apologetic sort of way and explains that his friend works here part-time and that he came to hang out with her and she came to play with her. And she's like, this isn't a playground, which is a very mom thing to say. Momiji apologizes. Besides, she says, if you stay out too late, won't your mother worry? And it cuts deep. It's okay, I'm going home now, he says. She warns him not to take any shortcuts and thanks Tohru for cleaning and then heads off to meet Momiji's father. Glück, he says. I don't know, I don't speak German. Bad luck, he says. He'll have to apologize to his dad later. He explains to Tohru that his mother's memories were suppressed. Mama thinks I'm one of the other Soma children, he says. Tohru clutches the photo. She's been holding it this whole time and she kind of brings it up to her face, growing more concerned as Momiji continues. Children who are cursed by vengeful spirits are born 2 months earlier than normal. To meet your true love, then marry your true love, and have a baby with your true love, and hold that baby, and then have it turned into a strange baby animal? What despair a mother would feel. The mothers of children possessed by vengeful spirits either become extremely overprotective of them or reject them entirely. My mama rejected me, he says. We see a woman with long, light hair in the next panel, in a simple dress, like maybe a nightgown, barefoot, and she's laying curled up, kind of as we see her, bandages around her wrist. Momiji's dialogue continues. She rejected me with her whole body. She wouldn't look at me. She was irritated. She was always irritated, always hysterical. Thinking about it now, I can tell she was broken, just like Hana. We see Momiji's memory. It seems like Momiji's father is talking here. Momiji is pretty old. The other thing that I forgot about when I was rereading this is how old Momiji is. Like, he's clearly, like, 3, maybe, or, like, he's, like, a toddler. Like, he's not a baby anymore. So she's been having these problems all this time. Like, she's been hysterical for years.
It makes me a little more understanding with his dad, who I always kind of, like, I don't know, not was mad at, but wasn't.
Was like, why did he do this?
Yeah, but
for
it's
sure.
like he obviously tried a while before.
Yeah, they tried for a long time
before coming up to this point, so I can kind of, sort of understand it a little better when you kind of realize that.
Yeah, it definitely, I remember reading the first time and feeling very, like, unsympathetic to Momiji's father, but I think as a more mature person, and now having a kind of a deeper understanding of this story, I feel like there wasn't anything left for them to do. Like, she wasn't going to take care of Momiji, and she wasn't, like, she was struggling to cope with things herself. Like, this was the most sensible thing to do. Of course, it's very painful.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's hard on his father too. We may never get his perspective on this, but it's a really tough decision to make, right? Anyway, so we see Momiji's father's dialogue. Like, he's hugging Momiji and he says, "Momiji, your mother's case seems hopeless now, but they say that if she forgets about you, she might get better. I imagine this will be really hard for you, Momiji, but Papa will love you more than enough for both of us. And if you love Mama too, will you help her?" We see another scene. Baby Momiji is peeking into a room, which is echoing what we saw at the beginning of the chapter, like while he was kind of looking around the corner. Momiji's mother is talking to Otori, who looks quite young still. Like, we know that Momiji is he's younger than Yuki and Kyo, and then we know that...
Yeah, we talked about how Otori looked like he was, like, still high school aged when he had to erase Yuki's friends' memories.
Well, we know that Ayame just said he's 10 years apart from Yuki. So, and Otori's around the same age, so, like, I don't know. He's probably, like, a teenager. He's probably, like, 14 or 15 or something in this. It's crazy. And yeah, I mean, we saw in his memory that he's a teenager when he was dealing with Yuki's friends, so.
Yeah. So he's older in this one, but still, I don't know, maybe 19?
Older.
I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know, yeah. His mother's talking to Otori. Otori asks, "Are you really okay with forgetting? You won't regret it?" And her face completely changes, and with this kind of hysterical look in her eyes, Momiji's mother responds, "The greatest regret I have in this life is that creature came out of my body." We come back to the present, and Momiji explains that he disappeared from his mother's memories, and she eventually got better. In 2 months, she could actually smile again. We see that Tohru has lowered her head, and tears are actually forming in the corner of her eyes, and Momiji says, "I wonder if I really helped Mama." He's been watching her this whole time, Tohru thinks. But Momiji continues, "I think that I want to live with all my memories, even if they're sad memories, even if they're memories that only hurt me, even if they're memories that I'd rather forget." As Momiji continues, we see Tohru's thoughts. We see her mother smiling. We see her bag tossed haphazardly to the floor. Her mother is bandaged and her eyes are closed, and Tohru brought to her knees. We see Momiji's dialogue again continues. "If I keep them and I keep trying without running away, if I keep trying, then someday I'll be strong enough that those memories can't defeat me. I believe that." Tohru cries and looks at the photo again. "I want to believe that because I want to think that there's no such thing as a bad memory. That's why I didn't want to forget Mama. I wanted her to keep trying. But that was my selfishness." And he looks up at Tohru and raises his finger. "It's a secret," he says. Tohru cries and embraces Momiji, and the other cleaning ladies hear the poof of them hugging. "Yes, me too," she says. "I also believe that," and they cry together. We see in the narration, "I want to take any memory and hold it in my heart so I can be someone who won't let those memories defeat me." We briefly transition back to Shigure's house. Kyo is talking to Yuki. He says, "Hey, I'm going with you, to visit her grave." And Yuki thinks, "Why are you telling me?" We cut back to Tohru and Momiji again, who are smiling now. Like, as if they kind of, like, the air is cleared a little. "Someday we'll overcome the pain and we'll have precious memories." The chapter ends with Momiji looking back at his mother, who's looking away. And that's the end of chapter 23. Did you make it through without crying?
I don't cry, but literally every time I read it, I get that kind of tear up feeling.
My breath... This time, I haven't read it in a long time, and I definitely got to... The part that always gets me is the part with Toru's memories of her mother.
Mm-hmm.
Like, every time Tohru is shown, I mean, like, and like when Momichi's mother is like, the only thing I regret is that creature came out of
Mm-hmm.
my body. That like cuts so deep
Yeah,
every
that's like a
time.
gut punch. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely really intense.
I know the first time I read it, I like full on bawled.
Oh,
But now, like when I start to read it, the part when he says, "But Mama doesn't know about me," I start to get the like choked up feeling
yeah.
like right away.
As soon as he says, "But Mama," it's all like fun and games, and then he's like, "But Mama doesn't know about me," and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh no!" Every
Yeah.
time. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Just the way he's like still kind of smiling when he says that.
yeah. It's so
Mm-hmm.
casual. It's like, "But Mama doesn't know
Yeah.
about me."
Mm-hmm. Like he's just so used to it.
Yeah, it's really depressing.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Oh well, I don't know. Maybe we should save it, but it's interesting that Tohru has this very fresh reaction to the loss of her mother, and compared with kind of like Momiji, who's been going through this for like a longer period of time. It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting that they like connect over this.
Yeah. Because like he tells the whole story without like getting all that emotional
Mm-hmm.
until Toru like hugs him, and then he kind of
Yeah,
breaks down a bit with her.
yeah. They join in that emotional
Mm-hmm.
experience, I think, rather than
Yeah.
him being alone or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And but Toru's memories, like all these, like the flashback of her when the curtain blows and you see her,
Mm-hmm.
and then the one where I mean, the scenes that I talked about that are her memories, they're like squished on the left hand side of the page, and they're very
Mm-hmm.
small. Like you have to really look closely to see what the detail is showing. But the way
Yeah.
that you see her, like on the floor, and I assume that it's like the scene that's being shown is like she's in the hospital with her mother,
Mm-hmm.
after the accident, and it's like her bag's just like on the ground and like she's on the ground. It's really,
Yeah.
really intense. Speaking of Toru's relationship with her mother, chapter 24. let's get into it. If you weren't already crying, get ready to cry some more.
Yeah.
So chapter 24 opens with the narration, what should I call this feeling? So like I said, it's the exact same, it's kind of the same pattern again. We're setting up to be a
Mm-hmm.
chapter, and Kyo is shown first. So this is kind of a chapter. Kyo is, maybe this is his narration, and Kyo is looking up. The main trio, so Yuki, Kyo, and Tohru, are walking in the temple, and Kyo says it's tiny, and Tohru says she likes it because it's homey. And Kyo is like, is that something that you want in a temple? Yuki says that he's glad the weather is nice. Tohru says maybe it's because my mom is happy that everyone's coming to visit her grave. Kyo is shown looking like contemplative, but he doesn't respond. Yuki asks if they're meeting Tohru's friends, and she says yes, and on cue they call to her. And Uo says, yo, nice day for visiting graves, huh? Which is awesome. And Uo and Hana are fully shown so that we can see their amazing outfits. Hana is wearing a long black dress with a veil, and Uo is wearing a long embroidered gang jacket. And Kyo is like, what's with the outfit? And Uo is like, what do you mean? And is it too plain? Hanajima asks, and he's like, not you. Yuki is like, Otani-san, is that a Suicide Squad uniform? In the most charming dialogue that we've seen so far. It's like, oh. It's Kyoko's jacket from her gang days. The coat of the leader of the Red Butterfly Suicide Squad. Red Butterfly, Yuki asks. That was my mom's name from when she was the gang leader, Tohru says cheerfully. Let's go, Uo says, and Yuki and Kyo are like, they're having fun. They're like seriously having fun. They get to Kyoko's grave, which has already been cleaned because Toru's grandfather has already been there, and he left Kyoko's favorite food for her there, which is some kind of mochi. I forget exactly what it's called.
Ashiwa mochi.
Yeah.
It's what it says at the bottom here.
Yes. And it's like mochi that's wrapped in an oak leaf, I think it says, right? Yuki asks which side Toru's grandfather is on, and she explains that it's her father's side. Kyoko was estranged from her parents, Uo thinks, as they set up flowers. So we got that, but Yuki didn't hear that. Yuki asks what happened to Toru's father, and she explains. He came down with pneumonia, they said. I was too small to remember it very well, though. And we see Yuki and Kyo's like eyes, like there's little cut scenes to both of them. Yuki thinks her father died and her mother too. So why isn't she under a dark shadow? How can she keep smiling and be so bright? I remember the day of the accident. She was called out in the middle of class. After talking a bit with the teacher, she ran out of the classroom. Her friends followed after her. There was an uproar in the class. I vaguely wondered if one of her relatives got in an accident. And Yuki is shown alone, kind of like in this scene where he's thinking, and says, back then, she was someone I vaguely knew existed. Just some person called Tohru Honda. Now, living in the same house and being so close, his thoughts are interrupted by Tohru calling for him, saying, "Look, these flowers are wonderful," and he smiles with her. And smiling with her continues the narration. It's strange. It's a strange feeling. Kyo, meanwhile, is busy shown looking quietly uncomfortable, which is probably what most people would look like visiting a grave, frankly. Hanajima, he asks, "Do you see ghosts and stuff?" "Of course not," she says. "I don't have a spiritual sense." And then she explains that Denpa and spirits are on different levels. Don't put them on the same level. No, I'm just kidding. She says, Denpa are waves, like people's feelings. And Kyo is like, "I didn't ask for a frickin' explanation." "Living humans give off the strongest waves," she says. "The dead give off waves as well, but they're very weak. They're drowned out by the thoughts of the living. Even now it's the same. Your waves are echoing. Why are you standing before a grave with such feelings of regret?" The wind blows and knocks Hana's veil off, and he turns to her, shocked. "Chaos," she says. Tohru asks Kyo if something is wrong, and he and Hana are like, "It's nothing." And she's like, "Oh, well, please come this way." And she grabs Kyo's arm, and then he turns around and realizes that they've been setting up a picnic, and then Kyo freaks out and is like, "Don't eat lunch in front of a grave." Uo says Kyoko would be happier if they made noise, and they argue, of course, and Yuki is like, "Most people wouldn't do this, but come on, we know they're not most people, right?" So Kyo eventually, they convince him to sit down, but he doesn't take any food. And we see a panel of him and Hana back to back. And Tohru is like, "Do you want anything?" And he's like, "I'm fine." And then we see them.
She's so cheerfully like, "Okay."
Yeah, basically.
But she's very much learned to take Kyo in stride.
Yeah, basically. It's like, well, whatever. Like, at least he's sitting down. He's like there. Yeah. So it's really all you can ask of him. Yuki brings the conversation back around, and he asks about how Uo and Hana and Tohru became friends, and so they chat about it. And they talk about the legend of the red butterfly. And as they eat and chat, Tohru looks back at her mother's gravestone, and she smiles a small smile. After their gravesite picnic, the gang disperses. Tohru and Yuki and Kyo take off to go home. And we see Uo and Hana talking about how it's much more relaxed when the three of them are together lately. Yuki and Kyo don't fight as much, and it seems like almost like Kyo is almost trying to take care of Tohru. This is Uo's dialogue because she calls him Kyo, so, you know. Someday, Uo says, one of them might end up admitting that he likes her. "Oh my, I would hate that," says Hana. Hana says that Kyo and Yuki's hearts are still ruled by chaos or confusion. She can't put her finger on it. A dark shadow has fallen over their thoughts. Everyone has thoughts like that, but it's worse than usual with them. As long as they have these thoughts, there may not be room for love. And if I might say so, she says, they're extremely dense in that area. But so is Tohru, Uo replies. Uo says that there are times when, without knowing why, before you know it, a person blooms. And Hana is like, "Oh no, when I think of Tohru going off to be a bride, it makes me cry." And Uo's like, "Now you're really jumping to conclusions." We cut to Shigure's house, and Tohru is out on the porch having some tea, thinking that the grave visit was fun. She's glad that she can introduce Kyo and Yuki to her mother. "Mom," she thinks, "these two will always take care of me. Someday I hope you can meet Shigure-san too. Mom, because of the people in this house, every day is fun. So please don't worry about me. Just keep watching over me, Mom." And then we see more memories of smiling Kyoko. Later, Kyo comes out to the porch to find Tohru asleep, and he tries to wake her up, saying that she'll catch a cold. And Tohru, like, laughs and rolls over, and I think she, like, smacks him with her elbow. There's, like, a little, like, a figure. There's a little shape by her elbow. Like, I guess he puts his hand on her, and then she rolls over and kind of knocks his hand off. She sleeps like a little kid, he thinks, and he sits down beside her. He looks down at her face and leans closer. "Hey," he says. "I'm sorry, okay?" We cut to upstairs, where Yuki has changed from one collared shirt to another collared shirt. Or maybe he just took his sweater off, I don't know, but this is his relaxed collared shirt, I guess.
This is my former collared shirt. Made the same joke from different angles.
Yeah, basically. Good. We cut to upstairs, where he's changed, and Tohru's door has blown open, and some of the papers have blown out. He goes over to kind of check it out, and he notices that the hat on the floor, and he's like, "Was that there when I dug her things out of the landslide?" And then there's a goddamn adorable chibi panel of rats helping Yuki with Tohru's stuff, which just confirms that that's what happened, in case you were wondering. I don't know if that was speculation.
Compared to the creepiness of his "I'm not going alone" thing.
It's like, I never said I was going alone.
Like, "Okay, guys, let's take this out."
And they're all like, "Squeaky squeak," or whatever, and they pick up all her stuff. It's precious. Anyway, Yuki picks up some of her stuff. Yuki actually picks up some of her stuff, which is shocking in and of itself, I should say. And he looks up surprised, and we see a wind chime. We see some imagery. This is like this full spread page. We see a wind chime, the boy that Tohru talked about before, running, wearing the hat, and Tohru reuniting with her mother after that incident. And then we see the hat kind of falling off. We see Kyo on the other side of the page, still looking down at Tohru, and the narration. What should I call this feeling still sleeping in my undeveloped heart? The flower in my heart. And then we close with Kyo caressing Tohru's cheek. And that's the end of the chapter. So, yay.
End of volume 4.
It was the end of volume 4. We at least got a nice... This after Momiji, all the tragedy of the situation with Momiji and Tohru and kind of the downer, like, beginning of this one, at least we got a little bit of, like... I don't know. There is a little bit of catharsis in here, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first note I made of is just kind of a timeline note. So this is the anniversary of Kyoko's death, which was 4 months before the start of the series. So that means we're about 8 months into the series.
Yeah. Yes. It's been a year since then. And it's May. It was April when Ayame was there, just for the record.
Yeah. It was April, but still cold.
Yes. Exactly. But the good news is leaves will be blooming soon. So...
Yeah.
Which I guess does line up with the timeline of the series because isn't it's like the first couple chapters she goes and helps Yuki with the secret base.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny how we're only like 4 volumes in. This is like the 20th chapter and it's been a year.
Mm-hmm. Well, it hasn't quite been
it's been 8 months, I guess.
A year of
as you said.
Actual series, but yeah.
Yeah.
We get a little bit more information about the curse that the babies are born 2 months early. I'm not sure if that ever comes up again or it's kind of an interesting little detail.
Yeah, it is. I don't think it ever like really comes up again, but yeah, we get that's like on top of the curse, on top of everything else, they're also born prematurely. So it's like as if it wasn't traumatizing enough, they're also like you have a premature baby that you have to, which is
And I'm gonna go out on a limb and label another theme here.
Yeah.
Which is the whole concept of keeping or forgetting painful memories, and the whole thing where Momiji and Tohru both believe they want to hold on to their memories even if they're painful.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's a theme.
Especially since we have a character who actively erases memories.
Yeah, but then everybody else gets left with them, like Yuki and Momiji. And I think also, I feel like this is sort of related to the theme of what Chikure said, like getting hurt by people and hurting people. That's how you learn.
Being alive and developing and becoming a complete person.
Exactly. I think memory, these kinds of keeping your painful memories and letting them not hurt you anymore or whatever is kind of a part of that. Like the things that people do that hurt you or the things that are difficult to deal with emotionally, those are the things that also make you stronger, make you a more empathetic person, right? So we see Momiji, who's almost kind of a little bit farther along in that process, maybe. I don't know. He seems a little we just recorded that anime break where he's we just released that anime break. The most recent anime break we released is the one where Momiji asks Tohru, are you happy you met me as well? It seems like he's still a little bit... I feel like what happened with his mother impacts a lot of his kind of the deeper relationships that he wants to have, for example with someone like Tohru. So it still is something that affects him, but like he says, he's trying to be someone who can overcome those memories, and that'll make him a stronger person. And same with Tohru, we see it's a lot fresher for her. It's a year after her mother passed away very suddenly, and those memories still, the ones that she remembers are all around the accident and seeing her mother after the accident immediately right away. Those are the things that she thinks about as things maybe to overcome. That's kind of what she's reacting to when he says that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a theme. There are a lot of people who we could say that this theme applies to, I think. But without going into spoilers, I think those are the 2 people we could talk about.
And I think even though it's not directly stated, but I think we get a little more information on Momiji and Hattori. How they relate to each other. Because we saw in Hattori's flashback chapters, there was a little memory of Momiji when he was talking about how the people's memories he erased, and this is obviously the payoff for that.
Yep, now we know. Finally, we know why. That's why he was in Hattori's memory at that time, because of this relationship they have.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting to compare, Yuki's kind of distrustful of Hattori, even though he says he's like not a bad person, but you shouldn't be, alone with him or whatever. But Momiji seems on pretty friendly terms with Hattori.
Yeah, I would say he's on even more than friendly terms. Like, I feel like they have a good relationship. Momiji kind of, when Tohru goes to visit Hattori for the first time, he almost like, Hattori is like, get out. And which seems kind of jarring. Like, he's like, leave Shigure's house if you're having fun. And then when he leaves the room, Momiji is like, Hattori, he's probably doing, like, he basically explains Hattori's behavior. He's like, he's probably doing this because Kana got hurt and he just doesn't want you to get hurt, right? Like, Momiji didn't have to do that. He didn't have to, like, be there or whatever. And so I think he's taken that relationship and kind of turned it around. Like, he understands why that Hattori was just trying to help, and he doesn't have a grudge against him like Yuki does, or like he's not wary of him like Yuki is.
Yeah.
I feel like Hattori's memory suppression technique must be really crazy because Momiji clearly looks like his mother. It's like, how many blonde somas are there? Wait. I mean...
Yeah. Like he's got the shiny hair effect that Momo doesn't have.
Yeah. I mean, he has...
Yeah, like even Tohru says that this is like Momiji looks more like his mother than Momo does.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought the visual style of Momiji's memories are interesting. So if you look at it, I don't know if you noticed this, but if you look at the manga, when Momiji's talking about the memory that he's having when he's little and Hattori is erasing his mom's memories, the outside of all the panels is dark. Like, they're actually shown on a dark background. We saw this style before with like Hattori's memories of Kana, for example. And I just thought it was interesting. It's very striking. I just think it's interesting if you compare it to, like, other memories of other things. Like, every time we see, like, Toru's mom in a memory, for example, except for this time where we were seeing her in the hospital, it's often, like, it's all, like, bubbly, and there's, like, texture, and it's light, and it's, like, usually just, like, her and Toru talking. Like, it's kind of, like, zoomed in on just them talking or something, or we just see her face, and she's giving her, like, wisdom drop that's teaching us about themes. But in these cases with these memories like this, where it's, like, really, really negative, Takaya seems to use this style a lot where it's, like, against a dark backdrop. So I wonder if that's going to keep going. Like, I wonder if that's going to become, like, a stylistic choice. It's already happened twice that I can think of. I didn't look any further back than that, but basically, like, the whole scene with Hattori is like that, too. I'm pretty sure it does. I'm pretty sure it stays.
I think it does. I think I can think of some future ones that have that style.
Yeah. So anyway, just wanted to point that out as a visual thing. I thought it was cool. It adds a nice dark feeling to it.
Is there one thing I hadn't noticed until this time is that Momiji's mom has her wrist bandage in that little flashback scene, which implies she was probably suicidal.
Yeah, she was cutting herself, maybe.
Yeah, something.
Or something. I don't know. Maybe she wasn't
self-harming or suicidal, one of the two. But yeah, I never really noticed that detail, which is kind of makes it even more obvious just how
desperate her situation
not okay she was.
Yeah, I remember noticing that before, but it always is very striking.
Yeah, I think I never noticed it just because of the way her hair is, like, spread out and everything.
It's subtle. Like, it's hard to tell if you're not looking very closely. Yeah, it's interesting that, like, if we're seeing that, either we're seeing that just kind of, like, narrationally, like, either we're seeing that or that's actually Momiji's memory, and if that's the case, that's, like, it's even more sad. Like, he's seeing her in this completely, like, incapacitated situation where she's a danger to herself, and it's very heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. That looks like it might have even been in a hospital.
Maybe. Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was
in the gown she's in. It could be like hospital gown.
I almost wrote hospital gown, and then I switched it to nightgown. Yeah, it could be.
It's kind of interesting because we have that scene, and we also have Toru's memory of her mother in the hospital.
Yeah, maybe that is true. It could be like a parallel between them. Like, Momiji's mother is close to being completely lost. Toru's mother is lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a tough choice. I feel like there's a lot of things that when I read Furuba as a teenager, so we kind of talked about Momiji's dad and how it was difficult to like him, I guess, or to feel empathetic to him. And I feel like the older I get, I find things with Furuba often change, like the way that I feel about them changes, or I feel them more deeply, or it resonates with me in a different way. Like, and I feel like this is one of those situations, like, as an adult and you're trying to take care of someone, like, you're trying to take care of someone else, of two people that you love. How do you make that decision? And Moji's dad's like, I'm just gonna compensate by, like, I don't know, trying to take care of both of them as best he can, right? So, yeah, it's a difficult thing to choose, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting how he says that in like 2 months she could smile again. So I wonder if that's kind of like what happened with Kana. Like eventually she got better, he said earlier. That's what Momiji said before, I think, or Hattori said before in that memory.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. I wonder if that's just like if you're that bad, it's not a quick fix, or if there's some kind of like lingering after effects of the memory suppression.
Maybe, I don't know. And like also, guys, it depends on like how, like we don't. It's never really revealed. It's not a spoiler, I guess, but it's never really revealed what the memory suppression technique is. Like I think Hattori says it's kind of like hypnosis.
Yeah.
That probably comes later, but.
No, I think he said it.
Oh, he said it.
I think he said it in his early chapter. He said it's like
I think
deep
so.
hypnosis or something.
If he didn't say it, sorry, but it's like there's not a lot of detail about what the memory suppression technique is like, other than that it's like hypnosis. Maybe if you have that deep, close of relationship with person, like Yuki's friends, like who knows how well he knew them. Like they had to wrangle all the children and erase their memories. But like if they weren't that close to him in the first place, maybe it's not a lot to suppress.
Yeah, because I imagine that's like they just had to suppress like one like day from their memories.
Yeah.
But it's like Kana it was months, and with Momiji's mom it was years.
And also like deep feelings and like like kind of like romantic attraction, or like the way that people feel protective of their children. Like those are deep-seated emotions and drivers of thinking. Like if it's some kind of suppression technique, I wonder like how much effort is it taking for him to suppress them, or like, you know, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
She's gotta have like freak out moments though, because like she was pregnant and gave birth. Who doesn't remember that?
Yeah,
that changes your body. I mean,
totally. Yeah, I don't know. It definitely would. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder how they rationalize that. I think like it's kind of, you know how like when Kano walks by and she says like, oh, Hattori never loved me or whatever, or it's like, oh, he didn't feel the same way as I felt about him or something. Like she says something kind of like that. Like I wonder if she just like rationalizes it away, like oh, I just like used to be like this and now I'm like whatever, or like I don't know, who knows, I don't know. And then of course like they had another child eventually, so maybe they're just like, oh, like you had, it could be that they supplanted it with some other memory, like she had a child but the child didn't survive or something, and you have
like
amnesia or like I don't know, how do they.
I was thinking it's like maybe it's like she thinks she had a miscarriage or something.
Maybe, I don't know, who
especially
knows?
If the born 2 months early thing, that could.
Yeah, you could.
2 months early usually doesn't result in a miscarriage, but it could.
No, and also like yeah, who knows, I don't know, like maybe they just but it seems like this is all speculation on our parts if you're listening that I haven't cut it. This is like it just seems like there's something about the memory suppression technique that like you forget many things but not everything. But in this case she forgot that he's her child. It's like in Kana's case she remembers Satori, she just doesn't think that they were in love. In this case it's like she knows Momiji, but she thinks, and she knows that he's a Soma, but she doesn't think that she's her child.
Yeah.
Which is really intriguing. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's mysterious.
Discussions on the metaphysics of the Forbidden Universe.
Well, we did say that we would do that. Talk about the curse and everything. And we got, I don't know. I just think it's interesting. Like the memory suppression thing is very interesting. Like if it is like hypnosis, I just think it's intriguing. Like I wonder what it is that they do. And it's consistent. It's not like some like crazy power that he has. It seems like they're able to remember things but not everything, so it's different but consistent, I feel like. So it's kind of there's definitely an approach to the memory suppression, I feel like, from the characters that we can see. We learned, I guess, speaking of other supernatural characters, we learned a little bit more about Hana's Denpa, which I thought was cool. I forgot that happened. And she can't see ghosts. Don't confuse them. I mean,
oh, she says it like it's obvious.
Yeah, I know. I like how Kyo's like, I didn't ask for an explanation, but it's like you kind of did. So yeah, that was cool. She says that they're like that every people all emit Denpa, even the dead do, which is kind of intriguing. I wonder if it's like overwhelming for her to be in the cemetery, but she said that live people are more overwhelming, so maybe not.
Yeah.
And she said they're like waves, and of course she pointed out that Yuki and Kyo are still in this state of like chaos or whatever, the darkness that can't be easily replaced by love. So
yeah, her whole scene with Kyo is very intriguing.
It's interesting. I like that Kyo has relationships with Tohru's friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like Uo and him like argue and they kind of like bicker and like pick at each other.
Yeah.
And then now he has this relationship with Hana. Hana knows something very deep about him that even he doesn't really realize or whatever, maybe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they have that connection now too. Whereas Yuki is like just kind of polite to them. Like,
yeah.
It's kind of what Yuki said. Like Kyo is able to connect with them very naturally, and he isn't so much. I think.
Yeah.
Like he's nice and he's polite to them, but he's like, oh, like, doesn't he? He's like, oh, doesn't he say like Otani-san? Isn't that a Suicide Squad jacket or whatever? So charming. Yeah. So like stuff like that. It's interesting. I like that Kyo is kind of has this relationship with her friends.
Yeah, that's something I like in Fruits Basket is that like everyone has a relationship with everyone else.
Yeah.
Like it's not like some stories. It's just like, oh, there's these two people and they care about each other and they don't really talk to anybody else, and these other people only talk to these people and stuff. So.
It feels like a real, like, genuine kind of set of people. Like when you go to school or whatever, you have a bunch of people that you talk to or whatever, and some of them you know better,
even if you're not really friends with them,
but you know them. Yeah,
people you're friendly with, even though you don't hang out after school or whatever. So
yeah, exactly. And I think it's interesting that like there's a scene where it wasn't this chapter, it was the one with Tohru, and it was the one where Yame shows up and Tohru's talking to Momiji and Haru. And it was kind of like one of the first times that we saw her just talking to them.
Yeah.
Like not one-on-one, but like the three of them. So it's like they're hanging out too, which is cute.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. They all the characters they develop relationships. So we're just seeing a little glimpse of like Hana and Kyo's relationship, which is cool.
Kyo and his two random friends.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, he has a good relationship with them. They call him Kyoko. And it annoys him. I like how Uo also calls him Kyo later too. Yeah. Like she settled on the nickname for him.
Yeah, I thought he's just got nicknames from everybody and he hates all of them.
Yeah.
So we had like Ayame with the Kyonkichi.
For a while Uo was calling him like Orangey or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's because he's one of those people where if you say it, it's annoying, and so people like to do it.
Yeah. It's like if he didn't flip out about it,
nobody would do it. Yeah.
Nobody would do it, but he's Kyo, so he has to. So.
Yeah. Like nobody calls Yuki any nicknames, like they don't, because he wouldn't care.
Another detail I liked is that Tohru's grandpa had been there to visit and clean up Kyoko's grave, because we already got a hint that they had kind of a close relationship.
Yeah, he calls.
Because he calls Tohru Kyoko.
Yeah.
And he's the one to like defend her.
Yeah.
To the rest of his family. Not really directly, but by
defending Tohru.
Talking about how Kyoko would be happier in other places and stuff like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. You're right. Yeah, and we got to see her grandpa again in a little panel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind. It's important, I think, and to like keep the grave clean and stuff, and he brought her her favorite food, which is very sweet, and left it for her. I think the whole picnic scene is really funny. I feel like Yuki and Kyo are super uncomfortable, which makes it funny.
Yeah.
And then of course they're like, no, we're gonna do whatever we want, because that's the way that Kyoko would want it to be, and I think that's very charming. I feel like it's appropriate for them.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because I guess it's obviously a cultural thing, because I don't really think it's that inappropriate to have a picnic on a graveyard with like your family member or whatever. I've seen people do it.
Yeah, I feel like being rowdy at a graveyard would be kind of annoying, but they're not really being rowdy.
No, but they seem like appalled by the fact that they're eating.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I've literally like driven by a graveyard and seen like someone's like truck parked outside of it and they got a blanket set up by a grave, and I just assume it's them eating with their family or whatever.
Yeah, I feel like I do think it's like cultural. I mean, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
I don't think you would bring food and eat it at a grave in Japan. But I do. I think some people here, like in North America, might be off-put by it too. Like they might think it's a little weird. There's
a pretty drastic range of attitudes toward death.
That's definitely true.
In our cultures, so.
Yeah, everywhere, I think. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're on the like, I don't know, the more lenient end of the spectrum, where they're like, this is what, or like kind of the like, we should do things the way like the person that we're here to see would want things to be done, not like the way that other people think things should be done, kind of spectrum. Yeah. So end of the spectrum, which I think is like, then there's like the alternate, which is like, we just this is how we do. This is how everybody should do.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think for Kyoko is appropriate. And it seemed like, we talk a lot about how Tohru has this attachment to her mother and that she's clearly still dealing with this loss, but I feel like genuinely she seemed the way that's drawn in these chapters, it seemed like she enjoyed it and it was like a good experience, so maybe that was helpful.
Yeah. We also get a pretty strong indication in this chapter that Kyoko really was a strong impact in Uo and Hana's life too.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we've really gotten much of an indication to that before.
No.
It seemed like maybe they were mostly just, like, oh, our friend's mom died and that's sad. But in this point, it seems like they actually had relationships with her on their own, too.
It seems like they had personal relationships with her, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the scene where they're in the school and they're like, oh, I could imagine her walking around the corner at any time. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they both seem like they're also still deeply impacted by it, not just because of Tohru, but on their own behalf, too.
It's not just like, oh, my friend had a bad thing happen to them. It's, I've lost someone also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can definitely tell that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it for non-spoilers. So thank you all for listening and for following us and sending us messages and reviews. It's very helpful, and we appreciate hearing your comments. This next time, we're going to be talking about chapters 25 and 26, which will be volume 5 of the original. Yeah. The original.
We got the next book.
Yeah. Who's on it? Kagura?
I can't remember. It might be Kagura.
I'm going to guess Kagura because I think Momiji's on volume 6. So.
Yeah, he is on volume 6, I remember.
All right. All right, good. Well.
Anyway.
We'll see
volume
you
5.
Volume 5. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, we're back to talk about spoilers. There's probably a lot of spoilers. I didn't make that many notes, but...
So I guess I'd forgotten I wanted to talk in the last episode about Zodiac siblings, but I guess we can talk about Zodiac siblings and parents.
Oh.
This time.
We could talk about Zodiac siblings and I can cut it in if you want.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's relevant to this chapter too. So.
Okay, let's do it.
Because Momo's here.
Yeah, Momo's here.
Because I think only Yuki and Ayame and Momiji and Momo are siblings at the beginning of the series of the Zodiac.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you mean before the series starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then Hiro's sister comes later.
Mm-hmm. Which is kind of interesting. Like, I can definitely see how if you have a Zodiac child, you wouldn't want to have another child.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Unless you're Yuki and Ayame's parents, and then you're like, yes.
Yeah, and it kind of makes me wonder. I wonder if, like, is a Zodiac child always the firstborn, if there's going to be a Zodiac child?
I don't know. It's a good question. We don't have any younger sibling Zodiac kids to hear from.
Except for Yuki, whose older sibling is also Zodiac. So.
Yeah, so it doesn't really count in that case, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we ever find out about that.
No, I don't think so. I'm just kind of speculating out loud.
Yeah. No, it's interesting.
Yeah, so we have Momo here, and she actually comes back later. Yes.
She's helpful.
Mm-hmm. And adorable.
Yes.
Momiji is right. She's so cute.
Momiji's right. She is so cute.
Yeah, I think Momiji's whole thing about how Zodiac parents either become overprotective or completely reject their child is kind of an interesting thing to think about in relation to the ones we meet later on and learn more about.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering about, like, Shigure's parents because we never get that much information about them.
Yeah, I think, don't we actually see them, like, really briefly?
Oh, yeah. Doesn't he say, like, oh, that was my parents?
Yeah, it's like that, it's that, like, party or whatever that he took his editor to.
Yes. And they're like, what? His parents? Or whatever, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's implied that they're, like, politely distant with each other.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of interesting.
And then we know about Yuki and Ayame's parents. Atori's parents, there's a side note panel about them later. And I'm pretty sure it says that they were not estranged, but his household was pretty cold, I think it says in the note. So something like that.
And I think he says that, like, he would suppress people's memories on his father's orders before. Yeah.
Yep. So. I think we also talked about this before when we talked about Atori, but I'm also pretty sure that in that note it says that his father was the one who taught him the memory suppression technique. And his father did it before him, so...
Yeah.
So I guess there's that. And then, of course, we met Ritsu's mom before, just now. Who I guess I would classify as overprotective, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And then there's... later we see... Well, I was like Rin's parents who pretended and then rejected her. Then there's Kakura's parents, who are also not... Well, she lives with her parents, and they have some kind of relationship, so I wouldn't describe it as rejection.
I think it was said that like it used to be like really strained, but they've gotten better recently. I think she says something like that.
We never see Haru's parents. Kisa's mom is there, but I don't know if they're overprotective either.
I think she's like meant to be kind of overprotective, like just in kind of a different way.
Yeah. I think when we see her, she's like frustrated with the situation with Kisa.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to tell, but...
Yeah. But even kind of the way she's talking to Kisa about, like, it seems like she wants her, like, she's saying it kind of harshly, but wants her to get over her issues so she can stop being so, sad, basically.
Yeah. It's like, I don't want you to be sad, get over it. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, something like
she's
that.
She's like at her wit's end at that moment, but
yeah,
you get the impression that she's trying really hard.
I think she's kind of like, she doesn't know what to do or whatever, doesn't know what to say. And then, of course, we meet Hiro's mom, who's the, like, A+ mom of the Zodiac.
Yeah.
I wouldn't classify her as overprotective.
Yeah, I think she's kind of smothery.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And I think Kyo's mom is an interesting case.
Yeah, Kyo's mom...
She's kind of both.
She is kind of both. Because she's like, quote unquote, she pretended that everything was fine. But she...
I think she, like, did love Kyo and wanted to protect him, but she wanted to do that by, like, it's like, I want you to be different.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to not be.
She was like, everything's fine if I just, like, keep that bracelet on. Everything's gonna be fine. Everything's cool.
Keep you close and smother you and nothing happened. It'll be good.
Yeah, it bothered him that she pretended that she wasn't afraid of him, he says, right? I feel like that's a good way to describe it. It's like she pretended like nothing was wrong. She forcefully pretended like nothing was wrong and that everything was fine, and that bothered him.
His dad's just an asshole.
Yeah, his dad blames him for everything. Oh, Kureno. We don't know anything about Kureno's parents. Kito's parents.
He doesn't count anyway. He's not part of the club.
He's not in the club anymore, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But he was born possessed, so.
Kito's parents are one of each.
Yeah, Kito got the lottery on Zodiac parents. I feel like that's everybody. I could have said them in like a logical order, so it'd be easy to remember, but who cares? Whatever.
It's fine.
Yeah. So I feel like the majority is like, I don't know if did Yuki's parents reject them? They definitely weren't overprotective.
Yeah. I think they kind of rejected them as people.
Definitely.
They embraced them as status symbols.
Yeah, Ayame was kind of a nuisance, and Yuki was the status symbol. Yeah, for sure.
Family relationships in the Zodiac.
Yeah. I mean, other people's families in Fruits Basket too, but particularly in the Zodiac.
Especially in the Zodiac.
For sure. I mean, even we learned that, like, Tohru's... There's a really small note, but we learned that Tohru's mom was estranged from her parents, and that her grandfather is, like, probably the only one who came to visit her grave and stuff, like, Yeah, it's a whole slew of depressing things. That's fine.
Definitely get more into it later, but I just thought it was an interesting time to think about Zodiac parents and siblings.
You're right. Yeah, they don't, and they all have different and varied and strained relationships for sure.
Yeah.
Even the ones, like, I think Hiro has, not like mixed feelings, but I think he kind of has. He has a bit of mixed feelings about his mom and how his mom acts.
He's the protective one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he is the protective one. He's the parent. And yeah, and of course, when his sister comes, it shakes everything up too. So.
There was a lot of Kyoko and Kyo foreshadowing in these chapters.
Yeah, you can't blink without.
Yeah, like even the early on thing where Uo was like, "Oh, I think Kyoko would really like Kyo."
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, she did, and she did tease him about his hair, I think.
Yep.
And then, of course, the whole... I mean, like, Hana... It's been foreshadowed for a couple of chapters. It's like he's in chaos, and Hana saying, "Why are you standing in front of her grave with such feelings of regret?" Like, that's really hitting the nail on the head. It's something that I definitely didn't, like, notice when I was a kid, or, like, when I read it the first time.
Like, I noticed, I was like, I wonder what that means. It's weird. Didn't really, like...
Yeah, like, what up with
something
that?
Something I definitely didn't notice is, or at least, put sign meaning to, was him apologizing to Tohru at the very end.
Well, you could take it as, like, "Oh, I'm sorry that your mother died," right?
Yeah.
It's ambiguous, too. But yeah, it's definitely, that's what it is, and that's why he was hesitant. It's why he didn't say anything. We know.
Yeah, and just his whole unease with the whole situation throughout the chapter.
Yeah, he's conspicuously shown many times looking very uncomfortable, but also it could be like, oh, you're just uncomfortable being in a graveyard, which,
yeah,
I mean, like I said, I feel like that's a reasonable reaction.
Yeah, it's definitely easy to overlook
if
you don't know the background. So.
For sure.
But yeah, it's chock full of that.
I felt it had this also had a little couple of like Tohru spoilers. Like,
yeah, I have a note in my spoiler section that just says romance with a tilde after it.
Yeah, romance. That's what Ayame sells at his shop, right?
Yes.
Yeah, she like grabs his arm when they're about to eat. And then he kind of like he gently like touches her cheek when she's asleep.
Yeah.
And even Uo was like, "Oh, Kyo's trying to take care of Tohru," and I was like, "That's really conspicuous that you would say that."
Yeah, and just their whole conversation of like one of them might end up admitting he likes her.
Yeah, they say that, and then we also have like another hat who's who with the hat scene.
Yep. Hat foreshadowing.
More hat foreshadowing. Hat-san is back. I mean, I just thought it was really funny that Yuki went in there to like clean up her stuff. Like he wasn't just like meh and like close the door. I feel like that's what really would have happened.
I would have just kicked the papers and closed the door.
But I did enjoy the rats, the flashback of the rats helping him carry shit. That was great. I also thought it was interesting how Uo was like, there are times without knowing why before you know it, a person blooms, and it's like, well, she kind of does that with Kureno. It's almost like foreshadowing. Hana kind of looks at her in like this weird like knowing way after she says that, and you could interpret it as being about Tohru, but also like I think it's kind of about her. Like I don't know, it could be foreshadowing for what happens with her too.
Yeah,
or at least we can see that kind of adding to what happens with her. I don't know if that was intended at this point in the story, but I'm sure that it was. I don't know, I feel like Takaya had everything moderately planned out.
Yeah.
So it was probably planned that they would end up together too. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. I was like, interesting. Well, predicting your own future, are you? Without knowing it, you suddenly meet a rando guy who drops a bunch of stuff in a convenience store. Nobody else's memories get suppressed or anything, right? Like this is the last time, not like last time we hear about it, but it's kind of last time we hear about it, isn't it? Like the big people I can think of are this time with Yuki, Kana, and Momiji's mom. It's not like Kyo's dad's memories aren't suppressed. It's not like Rin's parents are suppressed or anything like that. Like
I feel like it might come up as a threat now and then, but
Hattori will erase your memories, and Hattori's like, no, I'll be cold forever or whatever. Why didn't you leave when I told you to? Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
A cage of endless snow or whatever.
In my darkened room of endless snow or whatever. So dramatic. That's the kind of stuff that I felt like, if you listen to the like most recent anime break that we published, that's like the kind of wording that I feel like was slightly different than what was the original translation was. I don't know if he says the same thing or not in the Japanese version of the script, but he's like, amidst in the darkened room of darkened snow forever or whatever. I have a lighthearted thing. It wasn't even spoilery, but Yuki was helping Tohru clean again. At the beginning of the chapter, he's like wiping down the table. I forgot to add that before. I just thought it was funny. It's kind of like a thing now with them. She helps him garden, and he's like helping her clean. I feel like in my head, what's happening is Tohru is trying to help him like be a more stand-up person. She's like, this is how we do the dishes. And like, or maybe Yuki's like, I want to be better. And he's like, I could see him being like, this is a part of his self-betterment, you know?
Yeah. I feel like he probably offers to help.
Probably. And then she's like,
and she's like, what task can I give you that you won't screw up?
Yuki, go wipe down the table, like a 3-year-old. And he's like, okay. So funny. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any other spoilery things. It's like the main thing that was spoiled is like just the relationship with Kyo or like the main spoilery stuff is like the relationship with Kyo and Kyoko. Some shippy stuff.
Yeah.
And then I don't even know, like the stuff with Momiji is also not really a spoiler. It's just more about them connecting as characters. So he and Tohru, I mean.
Yeah, that was more like paying off some earlier spoilers.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of this chapter again also like wrapped up a bunch of things. I feel like that's why there's not a much of spoilers, like we sometimes see. Yeah. Okay. I don't know.
Spoilers come in waves.
They do. I think. I feel like we got like a bunch, and then a couple have been paid off, and then we're still like there's some that are just like suspended that we're not going to see for a long time come back, like Yuki and Kyo's kind of like their enviousness of each other,
A lot of Aikido stuff isn't going to pay off for a while.
A lot of Aikido stuff. Also, Kyo and Kyoko's relationship we're not going to see for a long time. The hat we're still not going to see for a while.
Yeah.
I think that comes in like the beach arc, so I think we have a couple more volumes, like not too many, but there's still like a good amount of chapters.
Yeah.
So we're keeping that juggling. We haven't learned that much more about the curse. Well, we did. I mean, we learned about the parents and the family relationships within the people around the people who are cursed, I think.
And that babies are born 2 months early.
And they're born 2 months early.
Did you say you had a spoiler thing about that, or was it?
It was that. Aren't they like relieved when Hiro's mother doesn't give birth early to his sister? Or something?
I remember them being relieved because all the Zodiac members are already there.
That would make more sense.
Yeah.
In that case, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine they would think that if someone in the know got pregnant, though.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, oh, good. 8 months. We're fine.
Yeah, for sure. And then, of course, yeah, Hiro was worried about what's going to be like with her, but it's fine.
It's all good.
Everything's fine in the end.
That scene makes me happy cry when Hiro's holding his baby sister.
Yeah.
After he's been released from his curse.
Isn't he crying? It's very powerful.
Yeah. And then his mom comes in and is like, I can hug you both.
Yeah, it's really sweet. And then Aikido freaks out, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Their reactions to the curse breaking is always really interesting to me. Like, there's that, and then, like, Momiji, I think he kind of, like, hugs himself. Shigure is like, oh, this is what it feels like, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
I think Haru and Rin are together. And, of course, Yuki's with Machi, which is really interesting.
Yeah. It's nice how a lot of them are, like, with loved ones when it happens.
Yeah.
Yame's with Mina at the time, and, of course, Kyo and Tohru.
Kyo and Tohru together. Tohru's face makes me cry every time. It's so expressive. It's like one of the like probably the most expressive faces. Like this, the ability to describe what's on their faces is going to get harder and harder.
Yeah.
I feel like their emotions become more and more complex. Yeah.
I also really like Akito's reactions to the curses breaking. She's like increasingly desperate and vulnerable.
Yes.
She's like practically begging them instead of like approaching them as like not in control for once.
Yeah. It's like doesn't she like slap Momiji or whatever?
Yeah, but like when she first approaches them all, she's like almost dropping to her knees begging them.
Yeah. Like
not to leave, which is interesting compared to how she usually is.
Yeah. Well, she's very desperate at that point, right?
Yeah.
And because I think her kind of like attitude starts to change around that time. She's more and more concerned about being like all the things that are sort of like in her character, like being left behind and being like all her rejected and all that junk.
Yeah, all her insecurities are coming to the forefront at that point, and
Momiji,
then everyone's leaving her, and she's like,
yeah. Momiji and Hiro sort of trigger that, and then it just gets worse when all the other ones kind of break too. So anyway, well, that's it for this. Hope nobody cried listening to this part of the podcast. But
I hope everybody cried.
I just want
not listening to us, but reading
it. Yeah, I think like just seeing their faces too like makes a huge difference. Like I can I can voice act as much as I want, but it's not gonna have that Takaya emotional quality to it like the manga does. So go read the manga again and cry some more. Anyway,
it's cathartic.
It's good for you to feel your feelings. I feel like I've read Furuba enough times to know. I mean, it was funny when we were reading these chapters, like the Momiji's, when we talked about the chapter with Momiji, we were like, oh, this one's a gut punch, and this thing's a gut punch. And it's like, still, every time, it's like you feel it coming, and then it happens. It's like still really emotional, even if it's not the same intensity, I think. Yeah. Well, that's it for now, then. So, thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.